anthropocentrism or human supremacy, and I use these two terms interchangeably, is the cultural conditioning into the belief that humans are superior to all other life forms and entitled to use them. In our time, human supremacy manifests as three invisible, widespread beliefs: that Earth belongs to humanity, that the planet consists in resources for the betterment of people, and that human beings are obviously superior to all other species. These beliefs are invisible in the sense that they are rarely, if ever, explicitly stated, but they can be discerned as the underlying assumptions according to which people act in the biosphere. To look at the legacy of anthropocentrism is to look at who and what has been displaced to the periphery. And that has been wild non-humans, indigenous people, or so-called uncivilized people, and wild nature overall. The displacements can be grouped in two broad categories. They are the ideational displacements that involve belittling ideas about non-humans, about so-called savages and the wild. And then there are the physical displacements that have to do with geographical conquests that have exterminated and dislocated others. There has been no shortage of proposed distinguishing attributes: reason, language, morality, civilization, technology, free will, etc. These have been offered, and offered again and again, as human distinctions. And such distinctions have been foundational for hierarchical narratives about life. The great chain of being, with man at the top, minerals at the bottom, and we all know how to fill the space between. This hierarchical order has not only been about the nature of being, what philosophers call ontology, but it has also been a moral order, sanctioning man's use of everything beneath him. The physical displacements we are keenly familiar with. Before the civilized conqueror, forests have given way, and so have grasslands and wetlands, and rivers and lakes, and more recently the seas. Wild animals have been killed, enslaved, forced to remote areas, and driven to regional or total extinctions. Indigenous people have been labeled as savages or as animals and endured genocides and subjugations. Now, the ideational displacements, these cognitive belittlements of others, and the physical displacements have worked closely together. Anthropocentrism is not just a worldview. It's not just a picture of how things are. It is a lived worldview, a perspective that has carved the very world we inhabit, both mentally and physically. But the alliance between the superiority complex and the technical prowess of the civilized conqueror, this lived worldview of human supremacy, sheds light on so many crimes committed against the living world. And I'm going to touch on two consequences for humanity. One, the inability to discern any reason for limiting expansionism. And two, becoming blindsided to the loss of the planet's richness and beauty. On the first point, the wisdom of limitations belongs to cultures that respect their non-human and human neighbors. It is that respect that gives rise to restraint. But the worldview of human supremacy, in that worldview, respect for neighbors and their homes is extinguished by disparaging beliefs. Either they do not morally count, or they are inferior, or they are nothing but resources. So the conditioning of the human into a culture that is superior and entitled precludes the arising of restraint that comes from respect, from caring, and from a desire to fit in rather than take over. So nonstop expansionism is effectively built into human supremacy. Today, this absence of limitations, of restraint, is rampant all around us. It has become a kind of madness. We see it in the normalized violence of factory farms, the trashing and depletion of the seas, the drive to dam the rivers of the world, the rendition of whole landscapes in pursuit of fossil fuels, the trading of rainforests for plantations and pasture. We see the inability to countenance restraint even in the defiance of the number 350 parts per million. Civilization seems unable to halt its expansionism, even in the face of its own potential demise. Men pay for the increase in power with alienation from that over which they exercise power.